Two of Africa's most powerful carnivores reign over the savanna. Lions rely on strength and teamwork to hunt prey no other predator can catch. While hyenas are also masterful hunters, they're quick to take advantage of other opportunities. Their powerful jaws slice through hide and bone with ease. Both species have large families to feed, creating a cycle of life and death on the savanna. Others thrive on their leftovers. This specialized and sometimes surprising caste of scavengers relies on lions and hyenas for survival. At the very top of Africa's food chain is the lion, king of beasts. These apex predators possess power and poise. They hunt some of Africa's biggest and most dangerous animals and dominate other carnivores in the race to secure enough food to survive. There are few things more impressive than a lioness on the hunt. She stalks her target undetected. Before launching the attack. The arrival of another pride member signals the end for the zebra. Lions are revered the world over as regal beasts, and they thrive across the savanna in large, close-knit families. While the lion is revered, the hyena is mocked. These masterful opportunists are considered the clowns of the African bush. Viewed by many as manic and mean, their reputation precedes them. But it's ill-deserved. Though known as scavengers, they are actually accomplished hunters, some killing as much as 95% of their food. Like lions, hyenas also live in highly social and strictly organized societies. But what makes them special is their ability to take advantage of resources other animals can't. Hyenas and lions live lives with a delicate mix of competition and cooperation. The animals they kill don't only support the pride and clan, they're a source of sustenance for a host of other creatures, large and small. These scavengers are heavily reliant on these top two predators for survival, building their lives from the leftovers. A pride relaxes during the heat of the day. While they rest, there's plenty of time for play and bonding. The cubs have a charmed upbringing, watched over by the pride's adults. They'll rely on their family for protection and food until they're around 16 months old. Their mother has spent her whole life living with her female relatives in this pride. And she'll get important help from her sisters, the cubs' aunts, in raising them. The pride's lionesses suckle one another's cubs, helping to share the burden of raising the young family. While they don't have a breeding season, reproduction is often synchronized within a pride. Lionesses give birth to litters of between 1 and 4 cubs at roughly the same time. This means that all of the cubs are similar sizes, avoiding competition at feeding time, giving everyone an equal chance at survival. While the cubs begin to eat meat at just over 2 months old, they will continue to suckle to the age of 6 months before being weaned. For the spotted hyena pup, life is very different. She lives in a clan where females hold higher ranks than males. Weighing around 70 kilograms, the pup's mother is a full 10 kilograms larger than any male. The pup relishes any chance to explore the outside world. Unlike lions, when the clan goes out to hunt, there are no babysitters to stay back and watch over the pups, so they're left behind at the den, hidden underground. The young hyena was born with well-developed teeth. But for now, she lives exclusively on her mother's milk and will do so until she's almost 9 months old. It's a potent formula. hyena milk has the highest protein content of any terrestrial carnivore. Unlike in lion prides, her mother receives no help in suckling or raising the youngster. And without synchronized breeding, hyena packs often include young of varying ages. As a result, the pup has a number of older cousins. These juveniles already have most of their first layer of spotty coat, with only their legs retaining the natal black. And they're old enough to join the clan on foraging trips. Females remain with the clan for life, but males will leave when they reach sexual maturity in a year or two, when they'll strike out to find mating opportunities in another clan. The female lion cubs will spend their entire lives in this pride. But like the male hyenas, their brothers will have to leave in their third year to seek out a pride of their own. They'll have to fight other males for control. And these pride takeovers can have a gruesome result. Incoming males will kill the existing cubs of a pride in order to bring the females back into heat. Cubs can only survive if the pride's females work with the resident males to help win the battle and prevent a takeover. The biggest danger to lion cubs is the vicious disposition of adult males muscling in on their pride. Throughout the savanna, even the largest and most majestic animals are vulnerable, sometimes from their own kind. Rhino bulls use their massive horns in fights for territories, and these can be deadly. This bull was no match for his opponent, which pursued him when he turned to flee. The scrapes on his skin show where he was repeatedly stabbed until the deadly blow was dealt, which pierced the skin at his foreleg. Like all animals, even the giants of the savanna must eventually die. And when they do, they present a perfect opportunity for the spotted hyenas to make the most of their skill set. An incredibly acute sense of smell and hearing means they're often the first to arrive at a kill. a young male approaches cautiously. Despite the meal on offer, this is a dangerous place. Lions also have a strong sense of smell and are not above scavenging. But the coast is clear. Other clan members quickly arrive. The raised tails of two females show confidence and excitement. And they waste no time in tucking into the rhino's thick hide. Their higher rank means they're in first for the best pickings. The young male respectfully waits his turn, picking off scraps when he can. The hyena's formidable cheek teeth, or carnassials, enable them to slice through even the toughest of hides. And they don't come much tougher than a rhino's. Eventually they gain access to the fatty flesh below. The hyena's skills haven't gone unnoticed. While many spend their lives actively avoiding lions and hyenas, others seek them out. The vultures have followed the hyena in the hope of being led to a kill. But they must wait their turn. So must the male hyena that first found the carcass. He's an outcast, born into another clan, which he left around the age of 3. After a long process of assimilation, the group finally accepted him. But as a male, he ranks lower than all adult females. And because he wasn't born into this clan, he also ranks lower than all the males who were. The only creatures he holds rank over are the onlooking vultures. Despite having done all the hard work to find the meal, while the females are around, he's unwilling to challenge for a prime place on the kill. The rhino carcass is an unusual and lucky find for the family, and will feed them for days. Weighing over a ton, the giant herbivore is part of a group of the savanna's largest and most powerful animals, all of which face no risk of predation. This group of heavyweights includes rhinos, hippos, and the largest land mammals of all, African elephants. At 5 tons, this elephant was well above the 1-ton threshold of safety and wasn't at risk of predation. But even its imposing size can't protect it from old age. The lion pride fed first, then the hyenas took what they wanted. Now it's left to the rest. A black-backed jackal is reliant on lions and hyenas to open up a carcass of this size. While they're adept at hunting for themselves, jackals will take any chance to scavenge. And the carcass presents an opportunity for a free meal. Jackals live in monogamous breeding pairs and have no wider social structure, but will gather in numbers around a source of food. Despite the elephant's desiccated appearance, the remains still have valuable nutrients to offer. Though this elephant's massive bulk kept it safe from predation, for everything weighing less than a ton, the threat from the savanna's hunters is ever present. And none is more threatening than the lion. One of the pride's lionesses has killed a warthog, and now, at over 2 months old, these cubs are getting one of their first tastes of meat. Lions' leftovers come in 2 guises: kills they intentionally hunted like the warthog, and carcasses they stumble across like the elephant. Animals of similar weight to the warthog make up more than half of the diet of most of the savanna's predators. Lions can go for these bite-sized snacks, but they also have the advantage of incredible strength and the ability to launch coordinated attacks on larger animals like this buffalo. Some prides get as much as 70% of their sustenance from animals heavier than 300 kilograms, including zebra, giraffe, and buffalo. Huge males are slower than females and often don't join in the hunts for more agile prey, earning them the undeserved stereotype of lazy freeloaders. When it comes to bringing down an 800-kilogram buffalo, there's no substitute for brute strength. And lone males are responsible for a substantial proportion of the buffalo killed on the savanna. Unable to finish the entire animal by himself, the pride's alpha is happy to share with some of the lionesses. And while the family can devour an impala in one sitting, an adult buffalo takes some eating. As evening sets in, the jackals begin to move. The male and female of the monogamous pair head out to forage separately. But they stay in contact via haunting calls. They know that lions operate most efficiently at night, and that the coming darkness increases their chance of scavenging a meal. They're in luck. After eating its fill, the pride has left the buffalo carcass unguarded, opening the door for the male jackal. And he's not alone. The latecomer isn't his mate, but another male from a neighboring territory. He may have smelt the carcass from as much as a kilometer downwind, following the scent of opportunity to its source. But despite the huge carcass, the first male isn't in the mood to share. There's far more meat than the jackal can eat here. But life on the African savanna is unpredictable, and they must take full advantage of every opportunity. Once he's full, he'll stash pieces of meat in hiding places to return to in the coming days. But he must work quickly. The rightful owner of the carcass calls in the rest of the pride. Now is not the time to be brave. Soon enough, they've reclaimed the kill. Unlike hyenas, mature males dominate access to food in the lion pride. But the alpha is still full, and there's enough here for the females and adolescents to share in peace. With so many predators operating under the cover of darkness, first light reveals many casualties and opportunities. In the night, a young blesbok has been devoured. The lions have already done a good job of gleaning from the carcass almost all the available goodness. But there are still scraps to be had. And a most unlikely group of visitors arrives to investigate. A family of warthogs. Warthogs are the only pigs adapted to grazing in savanna or grassland habitats, subsisting almost entirely on grasses and roots. But they'll occasionally supplement this diet with scraps of carrion. The piglets seem more inquisitive than hungry. And soon enough, they return to their favored food. On another day, these warthogs might have fallen prey to the lions. But today they get a chance to see life from the scavenger's perspective. Lions seldom leave a carcass before they're satisfied. But there are other smaller predators on the savanna, such as leopards and cheetahs, which will occasionally abandon their kill if startled. This presents even greater opportunity for others if they can beat the hyenas to the spoils. These hooded vultures are taking full advantage of an impala carcass killed then abandoned by a leopard. They're smaller than many other vultures and leave their roost around an hour earlier than other species in the morning. For these two, it's a case of the early bird catches the kill. Hooded vultures are often the first to arrive at a carcass, avoiding competition with their bigger, more powerful cousins. They use their sharp, slender beaks to eat as much as they can from the kill, eating up to 300 grams of food per day. Their early start and keen eyesight has paid off. But the vultures aren't the only opportunists waiting to beat the hyenas and jackals to unguarded spoils. An army from the undergrowth is quick to take full advantage of a fresh waterbuck carcass. Dung beetles are famous for their strategy of rolling balls of dung cross-country to stash safe below ground. But they're also one of the first to arrive at a kill, where they make the most of the waterbuck's partially digested stomach contents. Multiple species of different sizes all descend to exploit the resource. But they're not just here for dung. Many beetles will also eat the fat and meat of the carcass itself. And like the jackal, some will even stash parts in burrows beneath the ground. The dung beetle's exceptional sense receptors on club-like antennae mean they're often among the first to arrive on a fresh carcass. Given time, they'll be surrounded by an abundance of insect life. This wildebeest carcass fed a small pride of lions, as well as numerous large scavengers. But surprisingly, it's at this very late stage that it provides for the biggest variety of life. All that's left is a thin layer of skin, hair, and sinewy flesh. And an insect army has descended to take care of the very last scraps. This is an ideal nursery for maggots, and flies will lay masses of eggs while feeding. Beetles of various species abound, feeding on the final pickings that the carcass has to offer. They peel away layers of hair to get to the connective tissue beneath. And in time, the carcass is polished all but clean. The work of the lions has provided opportunities to feed for a huge abundance and variety of life, big and small. Jackals, vultures, warthogs, and even beetles all benefit. While many have to rush to take advantage of the opportunities presented by lions and hyenas, the world's most infamous scavengers require patience to get a meal. The hungry, white-backed vultures have been waiting for their chance to feed on the rhino carcass for over a day now. A spotted hyena can eat a third of its own body weight in a single sitting, enough to last it a week. And they aren't in a hurry to leave. The once bulbous rhino has been dramatically reduced. Its chewed-through hip bone stands as testament to the incredible jaw strength and crushing premolars of the hyenas. With less meat left on the carcass, competition is rife. The approach of the alpha female sends the others running. Her swollen stomach is a sign she's already full, but she continues to take as much as she can. While this may seem unnecessary, it's driven by her instinct to reproduce. The more she eats, the more milk she can produce, and the shorter she can go between pregnancies. This results in her successfully raising up to 5 times as many pups as lower-ranking females. But she'll have no help in feeding her young, so it's imperative for her that she makes the most of every opportunity to feed. Eventually satisfied, the alpha female and high-ranking members of the clan leave. The young male finally gets his chance to feed on the kill he found. He doesn't waste any time and dives straight in, deciding on a more direct approach. But with only one hyena left, the vultures sense their opportunity. Sometimes even the most powerful carnivores buckle under the weight of pressure from other scavengers. But an empty stomach drives him to return. He's not prepared to give up his prize just yet. Lacking the slicing teeth of the hyenas, the vultures can't pierce the rhino's skin, which means the young male only needs to defend the open side of the carcass. Eventually he decides enough is enough, and the frenzy begins. At 5.5 kilograms, the white-backed vultures can gobble a fifth of their weight in meat in less than 5 minutes. Unlike the hyenas and jackals, vultures seldom hunt for themselves, relying mostly on carrion for their food. And these typically green-necked immatures will have to learn quickly how to get their share in the maelstrom. But they should take care. In their frenzied feeding, white-backed vultures will occasionally get trapped deep inside the carcass and face the grisly end of being eaten alive by their peers. A much larger Cape vulture enters the fray, weighing as much as 9.5 kilograms. Its neck is flushed red with excitement. Normally, Cape vultures would dominate the white-backed, using their larger size to intimidate them, but the sea of feathers is impenetrable, even to the bigger birds. Together, the vultures will make short work of the carcass, taking whatever the hyenas have left behind. Once the rhino carcass has been exhausted, many of the vultures will resume one of their tried and tested food-finding strategies. Following the savanna's two top carnivores. Between lucky finds and patience, they'll rely largely on the savanna's apex predators to keep them fed. The lion pride and the hyena clan occupy the top spots on Africa's food chain. Motivated by the constant struggle to secure enough for themselves and their families, they take down and open up prey too big for most other predators to tackle. In so doing, they provide opportunities for a host of life forms occupying less glamorous positions in the cycle of life. On the African savanna, the life of some depends on the death of others. In a cycle driven by predators and dependent on prey, none are more important than the two most powerful carnivores. Bringing down big game untouchable by others. And opening access to resources that only the natural workings of time can provide. These social creatures do all they can for the betterment of their family. And in so doing, they unwittingly provide for an abundance of life, thriving on the results of their labor. The wilds of southern Africa teem with life. While most consider big cats or huge tuskers as the true wild icons of Africa, few appreciate the smaller creatures that dominate the land, the antelope. They too have rich stories filled with the daily struggle to survive. An intricate array of trials and tribulations centered on the need to feed and breed. With stories no less compelling, they're rarely told. Of these, 2 antelope outnumber all others, Springbok and Impala. For both, life in the herd is critical to their success. The long, lazy days of summer in southern Africa are coming to an end. While conditions are cooling down, however, relationships in the bush are heating up. It's the rut, mating season for impala. At this time of the year, males fight each other for mates. Between fighting off rivals and chasing down females, life is tough. There's little time for eating, and males quickly lose condition. This is the toughest time of the year, and the most important, because only the winners will go on to mate. The plains of southern Africa teem with antelope. There are more species here than on any other continent. These range in size from tiny duikers and steenbok, weighing about as much as a domestic cat, to massive eland that are the size and weight of a large cow. From forests to deserts, antelope are the backbone of the environment. But no matter whether they're big or small, all species are herbivores and therefore are closely tied to the prevailing environmental conditions. Fed by moist winds blowing in across the warm Indian Ocean, the East receives lots of rain, often more than 1,000 millimeters a year, and is covered in thick, lush vegetation. Meanwhile, the western parts are drier, receiving less than 500 millimeters of rain a year, and semi-desert environments dominate the landscape. Water is scarce and food is often limited and difficult to find. Droughts here are regular and severe. Temperatures regularly soar into the 40s. And every plant and animal living here is specially adapted to overcome the rigors imposed by the conditions. Meanwhile, the eastern parts of the region are more congenial. Moist savannas pulsating with life dominate. It's more humid and not overly hot, with temperatures hovering pleasantly in the mid-30s year-round. The vegetation is lush and green. More often than not, there is plenty of food to go around. Across this continental divide, two species of antelope in particular thrive. In the lush wooded savannas of the east, impala eat a broad diet and are incredibly successful. Their total population has been estimated at more than 2 million individuals. Only one antelope outnumbers them: the springbok. More than 2.5 million individuals range across the dry, open plains of the West. Here they dominate thanks in part to their ability to eke out a meal even in the toughest conditions, and they feed on just about any greenery they find. Together, these two species are the most successful herd-living animals in Africa. Herding behavior evolved following the last ice age, as the forests covering the continent receded. Animals moved out onto the new grassy plains for the first time. They grew larger and began to cover greater distances in search of food. And it became important for individuals to stick together in herds so that they could easily find mates and better protect themselves against predators. Despite their abundance, springbok and impala almost never occur in the same habitat and roughly follow the dry-wet divide. Without them, Africa would be a very different place. In the arid heartland of South Africa lies the 88,000-hectare Karoo National Park. This is one of the country's most spectacular parks, draped across the Nuuveveld Mountains that rise from open plains which millions of years ago were an inland sea. Just about every animal living here is specially adapted to surviving the desiccating conditions. A small herd of springbok is grazing across the meager landscape of the scrubby plains. Springbok are small gazelles, standing roughly 70 to 90 centimeters at the shoulder and weighing up to 45 kilograms. They're hardy characters, capable of suffering through even the toughest of droughts. Travelers through the Karoo during the late 1800s wrote of gigantic herds of migrating springbok, so numerous they took all day to pass their camps. These would move vast distances across the arid plains, taking advantage of the unpredictable and variable rainfall of the region. These great congregations are a thing of the past. In modern times, farming has disrupted ancient migration routes. And in the Karoo, springbok are relegated to small herds sprinkled across the landscape. "500 kilometers east, in the world-famous Kruger National Park in the wetter eastern parts of the country, a herd of impala is picking its way through the lush vegetation. Life is very different. The Kruger, as it is fondly known to locals, is a gigantic swathe of savanna bushveld stretching almost 2 million hectares along the northeastern border of South Africa. One of the largest and most successful wildlife reserves anywhere on Earth, Kruger is crowded with animals. Food is plentiful, and giant herbivores such as elephants and giraffes pick from the top branches of the trees, while at their feet, great herds of other browsers and grazers pick their way through the landscape. It's also home to some of the highest densities of predators in Africa. More than 100,000 impala munch their way through the thick bush. Impala are taller than springbok, standing almost a meter high at the shoulder and weighing up to 76 kilograms. With so much food and water available, a host of other browsers prosper. A small family of kudu browses nearby. Together, kudu and impala often form loose, mixed herds. These aggregations do have some benefit. In a world controlled by carnivores, with almost half of all impala deaths caused by predators, the more eyes on the lookout, the better. Predators also range across the arid plains of southern Africa. But animals here worry as much about avoiding the heat and finding enough food as they do about being eaten. Where the borders of South Africa, Namibia and Botswana meet is one of the dry western region's most iconic reserves, the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. Springbok are the most common antelope here. During summer, it's hot, with midday temperatures well into the 40s more often than not. Springbok fare better than most. They eat pretty much anything they find, switching between grass and herbaceous shrubs and succulents as dictated by the conditions. This young male is pawing up fresh shoots from the riverbed. Once he's eaten his fill, he heads for the shade to digest his meal. Springbok are masters at avoiding the heat. They face their white rumps to the sun, reducing the amount of heat absorbed. White underbellies also absorb less of the heat radiating up from the ground below. And they seek out shade to avoid the roasting conditions. Gathering in the shade of these acacias has another benefit. Springbok eat the fallen seed pods, and this is a valuable source of nutrition for them in tough conditions. The tree relies on the springbok to disperse their seeds. The pods contain extremely tough seeds that are resistant to the springbok's digestive system. As the springbok move off, they carry the seeds with them before eventually depositing them elsewhere in a nutrient-rich pile of droppings, giving the seed every chance of germinating. But one drawback of avoiding heat stress by gathering in the trees is that the close confines make it easier for predators to hunt them. A lone cheetah is stalking down the dry riverbed. They're the fastest terrestrial mammal and can reach speeds of up to 110 kilometers an hour for short distances. The springbok have seen his approach. He's still far away, so they're not concerned. They have the edge, as long as they get a head start on the cat. Nearby, a meerkat family is not so sure. Meerkats are 25 to 30 centimeters long and weigh about 1 kilogram. They're prime targets for raptors and a host of ground-dwelling predators, including the cheetah. They can't outrun cheetahs like the springbok can. So they rely on burrows when threatened. Just like the antelope, vigilance is key. The family deploys sentries to make sure they're not taken by surprise. This allows the rest of the family to root around for food below. Even the ground squirrels take advantage of their neighbors' early warning system. Each threat has its own unique call. The sentry sounds a warning, and the family scurries below. A close relative, the slightly larger yellow mongoose, is sharing the meerkat's home. But he's no freeloader and will often participate in burrow maintenance and even help extend the underground network of tunnels if required. Most of all, however, the yellow mongooses also benefit from their hyper-vigilant housemates. And vigilance is key to survival when you're on the wrong end of the food chain. No matter the habitat, whether in the dry west or lush east, herbivores always outnumber carnivores. Life is easier in the east, where there are plenty of plants available. But plant matter is hard to digest. Impala have an arsenal of tools to overcome the challenge. This female is chewing the cud. She's grinding leaves with her teeth, adding enzymes all the time from her saliva. Then she swallows. And then regurgitates the food so she can chew it some more. Every time the cud's swallowed, it's mixed with enzymes and microbes in the stomach to break down the tough cellulose of plant material. Without the repeated chewing and swallowing, ruminants wouldn't be able to obtain the nutrition they require from the plants they eat. It also means they spend less time foraging, giving them more time to rest so they can avoid the heat. Carnivores also rely on the success of this digestive system, albeit indirectly. With predators lurking, impala need to be vigilant in order to survive. Large omnidirectional ears give them excellent hearing. And they have an acute sense of smell, enhanced by their enlarged nasal passages. Their eyesight is excellent at detecting movement at great distances, with a field of vision spanning 300 degrees of horizon. Not all threats come from outside the herd, however. Only male impala carry horns, which they use in disputes over females. This territorial male has spotted an intruder. He takes up an aggressive posture to warn off the challenger. They lock horns and engage in a shoving match designed to determine dominance. Fights seldom cause permanent damage, as long as the loser backs off. Horns are specifically shaped for wrestling other males rather than stabbing and piercing, which gives them little value for defense. Horns are a hindrance in close bushy confines, and females have no use for them. On the dry, open plains of the arid half of the country, however, it's a different story. Here, both sexes typically bear horns, and scientists have wondered why. One theory suggests springbok females have horns so that their teenage sons resemble them. There is intense competition amongst mature males in mixed herds, so the longer young males look like females, the longer they are ignored by dominants. The latest theory suggests the female's horns have more to do with deterring predators based on how conspicuous the animals are. In the open, antelope are easily spotted by predators, and horns are a deterrent, so males and females both have them. The taller you are, the more conspicuous you are, so the bigger the deterrent you need. Which explains why the gemsbok, a much larger desert wanderer, has impressive horns to match. Like springbok, these rapier-like weapons are borne by both males and females. It's winter on the fringes of the arid Great Karoo, at the southeastern extent of the Springbok's range. Winter here is breeding season for springbok. This territorial male is marking the bushes with secretions from glands on his head. He's advertising for mates and warning off rivals. Tension is everywhere. A young male ignores the warning, and the dominant male puts him in his place. This territory is not big enough for both of them. Dominant sees off the challenger, for now. On the plains of Africa, only the fittest survive. The dominant male, while battered and bruised, has earned his right to mate with many females, passing on his genes to future generations. Meanwhile, the loser's family tree has come to an end. Back in the wetter eastern parts of Kruger, a dominant male impala is chasing a mate. He's identified a female in estrus and is in hot pursuit. She leads him on a merry dance, and the hapless male can only follow hopefully behind, caught in her spell. He flicks his tongue and nods his head enthusiastically, doing his best to convince his would-be partner. And eventually, she relents, briefly pausing so that he can catch up. Once mated, he'll rarely show any further interest in her, even though she'll remain sexually active for a few more days. During this time, she'll be courted by other males and will almost certainly mate with as many as 4 additional suitors. The impala's range extends north to the grassy plains of East Africa. There are no springbok here, but there are 5 other species of gazelle. Two of them can be found here in the world-famous Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, thousands of kilometers to the north. Hemmed in on all sides by the steep slopes of the ancient caldera, this is one of the most remarkable landscapes in Africa. Fertile soils from the crater's volcanic history feed a menagerie of wildlife. In Ngorongoro, Grant's and Thompson's gazelle often graze together. Thompson's gazelle, or Tommies, are the most common antelope in East Africa, preferring the short grass of wide-open plains. They're remarkably similar in both size and color to springbok. It's thought this color pattern helps camouflage the herds from predators such as lions and cheetahs. But camouflage only gets you so far, and all gazelles on the open grasslands of East Africa are also fleet of foot. Back in the dry, open riverbeds of the Kgalagadi Transfrontier Park, athletic ability is paramount. These springbok are pronking. It's suggested this behavior advertises an individual's athletic ability to would-be predators. It may also release pheromones or be an important alarm signal to the rest of the herd. Other, more romantic viewpoints, however, suggest they're simply jumping for joy. Even in more vegetated regions, athletic ability is important to avoid the local predators. Impala can leap effortlessly more than 3 meters high and 11 meters over the ground. They're also fast. Even so, they're no match for tsessebi, one of their nearest relatives. Tsessebi are nearly twice the size of impala and are the world's fastest antelope, capable of reaching speeds of nearly 60 kilometers an hour. Hartebeest and wildebeest are also close relatives of impala. At first glance, it seems unlikely that these animals should be so close. Impala are graceful, while everything about the wildebeest is awkward. One thing all members of the family do have in common, however, is they live out in the open and gather in herds. And great herds attract predators like lions. And leopards. Living in a herd is advantageous. There are many eyes to scan for danger. So, remaining in the herd is important. Sick individuals or youngsters that lag behind are prime targets. It's not only predators who track the herds. A cattle egret is feeding on insects kicked up by passing feet. Feeding alongside herds of antelope gives this individual 1.5 times more food than a solo effort. Red-billed oxpeckers also track the herds. They're combing through their fur, looking for an easy meal. The impala tolerate the freeloaders because they're enjoying the grooming. And the oxpeckers are able to remove annoying ticks from even the most hard-to-reach places. Ectoparasites such as ticks aren't only an irritant, they also carry disease. So the impala benefit from the service. An entire world revolves around what's left behind by grazing antelope. Copper dung beetles are collecting impala droppings. There are more than 2,000 species of dung beetle. This one is a roller. He pats dung into a ball and rolls it away before burying it. Dung balls are food for the beetles and their young. If he's lucky, his ball will attract a female and she'll lay her eggs in it. He buries the balls safe underground, allowing the developing larvae to slowly eat their way to the surface. By burying these balls, he's also injecting valuable nutrients back into the soil, facilitating plant growth, and ultimately more food for impala in the great cycle of life. Impala and springbok are very similar in many ways, but they almost never live in the same habitat, with one exception: Etosha National Park in northern Namibia. Located in the arid heart of the Kalahari Desert in the southwest of Africa, this 22,000 square kilometer park is renowned for its bountiful wildlife. Animals here congregate at the reserve's waterholes to survive the parched surroundings. A black-faced impala has come down to the waterhole to drink. She's instantly recognizable by her black facial markings. The black-faced impala is a subspecies that lives across Angola and northern Namibia. It's better adapted to its desert home than the common impala of the east. The two subspecies will readily hybridize if they mingle, but black-faced impala are vulnerable, and Etosha is one of their last strongholds. For this reason, the government of Namibia tries to keep them isolated, but it's tricky. Private game farms stocked with common impala surround Etosha, and so the government works to keep them out of the national park. Down at one of the lush waterholes of Kruger, a herd of common impala drinks nervously. Danger lurks in these waters. Large crocs, such as this one, can be more than 4 meters long. Spooked, the impala dash back to the safety of the bush. But danger lurks here too. The herd becomes separated, enabling a lone cheetah to pick off one of the females. He'll gorge himself on his kill. But cheetahs are the smallest of the big cats, so he must eat quickly. If scavenging lions or hyenas catch wind of his kill, they will steal it. Nervously, he scans the surroundings. Having eaten his fill, he moves on. As the seasons march on, the rains return. It's spring in the moist savannas of the Kruger National Park in South Africa. The trees and bushes are bursting with new growth. New arrivals throng the surroundings. It's lambing season, and the bush is alive with youngsters. Babies suckle from their mothers for the first 4.5 months. Everyone in the family is jumpy. Being small in this world makes them a target. Leopards and jackals prey on youngsters. So the females have adapted to synchronize their births. With the young born in times of plenty, there's enough food for lactating mums. And the mass of youngsters swamps would-be predators and reduces individual risk. Still, it's best to be on high alert. A perilous road lies ahead for these youngsters. Only half of them will survive their first year to reach adulthood. But those that do will grow up to take their place in the great herds of Africa. Across the vast open spaces of southern Africa, these two species dominate the landscape. Springbok and Impala are the most numerous antelope, numbering into the millions. Though inhabiting different worlds, together they're the central characters in the giant circle of life that unfolds across southern Africa. From the dry deserts of the west to the moist savannas of the east, these two species are pivotal in the success of both plants and animals living across this divide. For in Africa, Springbok and Impala truly reign supreme. Their ancestors were the first vertebrates to colonize dry land. They inhabit every continent except Antarctica. But their world is rapidly changing. 20 species call this city home. What were once their wetlands are now our playgrounds. Golf courses, racetracks, urban development. This is the land to which they cling. Around the world, frog populations are in decline, and time is running out. It's late August in Cape Town, on the southwestern tip of Africa. This is the winter rainy season. Clouds gathering over Table Mountain herald a coming storm. The promise of rain is a signal for one of the city's most threatened inhabitants to move. A western leopard toad emerges from her daytime haunt. She's not alone. Another appears from a pile of firewood. Across the city, the entire population is on the move. These striking toads are explosive breeders. But they only have a limited 2-week window in which to mate. So tonight, everyone's heading to their nearest pond to get a piece of the action. but a perilous journey lies ahead. As many as 1 in 5 may die. Humans continue to destroy much of the toad's natural habitat. Now the wetlands they need to breed are few and far between. The roads they must cross teem with vehicles. When cars meet frogs, there's only one winner. The rains have spurred another city inhabitant into action. Cape rain frogs are calling. These endemic frogs only live in 2 small areas in the southern Cape of South Africa. Cape rain frogs live underground to prevent dehydration, venturing out to hunt and mate only on misty or wet nights. Unlike the leopard toads, they don't need standing water to breed because they don't have free-swimming tadpoles like most other frogs. They can't even swim properly. As far as frogs go, Cape rain frogs are also not what you'd call athletic. Both sexes are chubby with short limbs, which creates a problem. Many male frogs climb onto females' backs to mate in what scientists call amplexus. From this position, they fertilize the eggs externally. But female rain frogs are too plump, and his arms are too short. So to overcome the challenge, they both secrete a special glue onto their skin, allowing the male to stick to the female's back. She doesn't seem to mind her overly clingy partner. Despite the night's exertions, she's still got other appetites. A juicy earthworm does just the trick. Nothing like a little romance to fuel your hunger. From his piggyback position, the male fertilizes her eggs externally as she lays them underground. The tadpoles develop in a jelly egg mass and emerge as miniature versions of their parents a month or so later. Frogs are amphibians, an ancient group of animals descended from the first vertebrates to venture out of the water 400 million years ago. Even today, most amphibians have one foot on dry land and the other in water. While they're able to live and breathe in air, most lay their eggs in standing water, where they hatch into tadpoles. In some species, these are decidedly fish-like. The earliest known frogs evolved during the reign of the dinosaurs in the early Jurassic, 200 million years ago. From these earliest beginnings, frogs have diversified into more than 6,000 different species across all continents, with the exception of Antarctica. Frogs occur in all shapes and colors. The smallest can happily sit on a human thumbnail, while giant bullfrogs can grow 10 inches long and weigh 4.5 pounds. Large warty frogs tend to be called toads. But this is confusing because using the terms frogs and toads is like saying birds and eagles. All toads are frogs. This habit dates from Victorian times. The UK only has 6 species of native frogs, 3 of which are in the toad family. Because of this, the superfluous habit developed of referring to toads and frogs as if they were distinct. And when it comes to frog names, people have been somewhat predictable. The micro frog is tiny. Giant bullfrogs are massive. The rain frog comes out in the rain. Clicking stream frogs click. And shovel-nosed frogs have an unfortunately proportioned schnoz. At least it's good for digging. As far as the naming stakes go, leopard toads have it lucky, thanks to their beautiful yellow and brown camouflage. But appearance isn't all that's important. Frog skin is an incredible organ in its own right. While frogs have well-developed lungs for breathing air, they've also retained the ability to breathe through their moist skins when underwater. Some species have even evolved toxic secretions from the glands in their skin to dissuade predators. These often have startling colors to warn hunters to stay clear, sometimes bordering on the absurd, such as these mantellas, only found on the island of Madagascar. Others are secretly toxic. When threatened by predators, leopard toads secrete a white milky toxin from the lumpy glands behind their eyes. This is seldom lethal to the attacker, but can cause significant discomfort. Back in the suburbs of Cape Town, the male leopard toads have gathered at the ponds. These now reverberate with deep, low-frequency calls. Casanovas calling for their lovers. With few exceptions, frogs vocalize to call for mates. Vibrating vocal cords make the sound, which is then amplified by the special balloon-like pouch on the throat. If only human females found the sound of snoring so deeply attractive. Emerging from urban gardens, the female leopard toads all have one thing on their mind. Hopping out of the undergrowth, they're following their instincts. The female is returning to the pool where she was spawned. Year in and year out, her routine doesn't change. Though new obstacles may arise. But this cat has encountered toads before and knows better than to take a bite. She moves on. Having survived the cat, she now makes a crucial error. Swimming pools are giant traps from which there is no escape. Falling into the sheer-sided pool is a death sentence. Unable to escape, she'll soon tire and drown. Luckily for her, tonight there's a helping hand to set her back on her way. She moves through the driveway and towards the gate. The first part of this female's journey is over. But this is only the end of the beginning. Frogs most often live alongside water in moist conditions in the tropics. But they can actually be found in almost every habitat. The last place you'd expect to find a frog is the desert coastline of South Africa. Yet here in the semi-arid regions of the west coast, one species has adapted to the rigors of desert life. As night approaches, barking geckos serenade the sunset. Reptiles such as this seem right at home here. So is the surprisingly hardy desert rain frog. Like his relatives further south, these frogs also are not athletic. And like the Cape rain frogs, they're capable of living and breeding in the absence of standing water. After a night of hunting, dawn approaches. He finds a suitable spot. and buries himself under the sand. He'll stay here all day, cool and damp, and safe from the baking heat of the desert sun. "1,200 miles to the east and 1.5 miles above sea level, conditions are very different on the summit of the Drakensberg Mountains. Here, rivers surge off the sheer slopes, and winter temperatures drop way below freezing. Streams ice up, and yet even here, frogs endure. Maluti river frogs. This is the only place in the world they're found, despite the cold. When the temperature plummets and the surface of streams freezes, the frogs survive in the warmer water under the ice. Up here, sunshine can also cause a problem. Harmful UV radiation at high altitudes is intense. To counter this, these frogs effectively wear sunglasses. A growth called an umbraculum covers part of the eye, protecting the retina inside. Whether they live in deserts, mountains, or streams, frogs are most active in misty and rainy conditions. On the mountains skirting Cape Town, Rose's mountain toadlets are also breeding. The small mountain pools are full of eggs and tadpoles. Unlike the leopard toads, these little frogs are silent. They're the only species in South Africa which go about their business without so much as a peep. At the mountain's feet, hundreds of flat, dainty frog couples are locked in loving embrace. Unlike their silent mountain cousins, they're in full voice. It's early in the evening, and the females haven't started to lay yet. But over the next few hours, the pool will be swimming in frogs' eggs. Frogs' eggs are good food for fish and even insects. So the kloof frogs in the province of KwaZulu-Natal in the east of the country have evolved a cunning strategy to help reduce the threat. Rather than laying their eggs in water, they lay their brood on leaves or branches above water in a sticky jelly. Over the next week, they develop. From newly laid eggs to jelly baby-like embryos with external gills to recognizable tadpoles. After about 6 days, these will hatch and drop into the water. But this individual's nest has a problem. The branch has fallen into the stream, and the predators are at the ready. Water scorpions. named for their superficial resemblance to their terrestrial namesakes. But they're insects, not arachnids, and are more closely related to aphids. The water scorpion pierces an egg with his needle-like mouthparts and proceeds to suck out the contents. Frogs are not the only group of animals breeding. A colony of weaver birds is also busy with its own preparations for the coming season. Males busily advertise their woven creations, hoping to win the affections of a female. They're a noisy bunch. So too are the frogs below. While most frogs prefer to romance their partners in the dark, these raucous toads are more audacious. They breed day or night. Hidden in the reeds, this male is calling in a small dam on the outskirts of Cape Town. But he's not alone. The shallows are full of couples. As the females lay their eggs, the males fertilize them externally in the water. It's a veritable orgy. But not every lid finds its pot. And this lone male watches in frustration as everyone else gets lucky. Maybe tomorrow will be his day, or he'll have to wait another year to get his shot. Female raucous toads lay approximately 10,000 eggs in long jelly strings. Other local species can lay as many as 25,000. Over the coming week, remarkable changes will take place under the surface. Throughout history, frogs have played an important role in human mystery and legend. They were a sign of fertility and resurrection for the ancient Egyptians. And so frogs were folded into the bandages used to wrap mummies. Medieval doctors in Europe used frogs in all sorts of treatments, ranging from nosebleeds to diarrhea. European fairy tales transform a lowly frog into a handsome prince, simply with a maiden's kiss. Perhaps these legends have their roots in the magical transformation that all frogs undergo as they metamorphose from egg to adult. Frogs that lay their eggs in water tend to hide them among the plants on the edges of ponds and streams to reduce their chance of getting eaten by fish. When they hatch, they emerge looking nothing like their adults. This pool is full of African clawed frog tadpoles. For all the world, they look like fish. They breathe with gills and are herbivores with a long intestine. This species filters food from the water. As they grow, they undergo dramatic changes. Their intestine shortens and changes from being suited to a predominantly herbivorous diet to an adult one that's carnivorous. Little mouths grow into wide, bony mouths. Gills give way to lungs. Legs slowly appear. Tails shrink. And the eyes grow big and bulbous. All in preparation for the water-land duality that is their adult life. Most frogs are carnivores. This adult African clawed frog is lurking in the shallows. He enjoys a varied diet, ranging from fish to other frogs, and even plankton, and spends most of his time in the water. Well-developed webbed hind feet help him swim. He can see the plankton in the water, but relies more on his sense of smell to pick off the minuscule crustaceans. The rains have brought him an unexpected windfall. An earthworm, washed from its burrow, has fallen into the pond. It's a sizable meal. But worms can be tricky to swallow if you're not used to them. Eventually, he's successful, and he returns to his lair to digest his meal. Although frogs can be voracious predators, they're more often on the receiving end. A brown water snake is on the prowl. He's looking for an easy meal. And frogs are definitely on his menu. But they take some catching. Powerful hind legs propel the amphibians from danger. But the snake's not one to give up in a hurry. Success. should last the brown water snake several days. A green water snake is also looking for his share of the spoils. He knows that the rain triggers frog activity. He's an expert frog predator. But the rains have woken a sleeping giant. A giant bullfrog emerges from his underground burrow. He's spent the dry season estivating, or lying dormant underground. His long 5-month sleep has left him hungry. So the first thing on his agenda is food. Giants like this eat a range of prey, including insects, frogs, mice, and even snakes. Hunters can easily turn into the hunted in the topsy-turvy underworld. With his appetite sated, the bullfrog can now turn to other pressing matters. He knows the rain means many females will also be out and about. Back in the city, the female leopard toad is still on the move, drawn by her crooning suitors. But crossing busy roads is a life and death adventure. Many of the others don't make it. Despite the danger, the females have no choice. They must go on if they are to breed successfully. She makes it. As leopard toad numbers in Cape Town have declined alarmingly, people across the city have responded. Signs warn motorists to be on the lookout for toads. And groups of volunteers whimsically calling themselves toad nuts
patrol the roads. They lay temporary toad fences along busy thoroughfares, channeling toads into traps so they can gather them up and release them safely. Cape Town is a marble cake of urban and natural environments. Table Mountain National Park stands proud as the green heart of one of the world's most beautiful cities. It contains a rich diversity of flora and fauna, including one of the rarest frogs in Africa, the Table Mountain ghost frog. This critically endangered species lives in 6 small ravines on the eastern slopes of the mountain. These frogs are specially adapted to the rigors of living in the fast-flowing water rushing off the mountain. Sucker-like mouthparts help them stick to the rock in cascading torrents. They only live here, on the slopes of Table Mountain, which makes them extremely vulnerable to any habitat loss. Yet even here, in their protected environment, the populations of ghost frogs are under threat from the historical reservoirs that were built to supply parts of the city with water. These decrease the flow in the river, which can be devastating for the frogs. The recent dramatic decline in local frog populations has not gone unnoticed. Scientists now monitor vulnerable species in the vicinity of Cape Town and have put in place active conservation measures to protect the most endangered frogs. Wetlands such as this one in the center of Cape Town's Kenilworth Racecourse are carefully protected and monitored. This is the last known haunt in the city of a tiny endangered species called the micro frog. The rest of their wetland homes have been paved over. Ironically, the desire to watch horse races here at Kenilworth meant that the infield area was kept clear of invasive trees, which inadvertently saved the wetlands and protected the micro frogs. If it weren't for the racecourse, they would now be locally extinct. While ghost frogs, micro frogs, and leopard toads are threatened, one of the city's residents has become surprisingly cosmopolitan: the African clawed frog. During the 1930s, scientists realized they could use these frogs for the world's first pregnancy test. Urine from a pregnant woman contains high levels of certain hormones. And if this is injected into a female African clawed frog, it triggers the frog to spawn, clearly indicating that the woman is pregnant. Once this was discovered, African clawed frogs were bred and transported around the world. They also became popular pets. They're capable of surviving in a range of different habitats. So as these frogs invariably escaped or were released, they established themselves in the wilds of South America, North America, and Europe. And in their home country, these native frogs have invaded new habitats. But one place that isn't to their liking is the Cape. The waters here are darker and more acidic, bad for African clawed frogs, but good for Cape platanas. Unfortunately, as the water quality of many ponds has changed with urban development, so the African clawed frog has spread, displacing and interbreeding with the Cape platanas. This species is now extremely threatened, and few places with pure populations remain. Scientists regularly monitor the frogs. By scanning embedded microchips, researchers gain information on their population viability, movements, and mortality rates. It also allows them to check for unwanted African clawed frogs and remove any hybrids. Hopefully, this will help keep the Cape platana species alive. Around the world, fragile populations of frogs are only just holding on against all odds. Including some of the most flamboyant characters of the natural world. Whether they wear Liberace-style cloaks or drab Dickensian greens and browns, they're under threat. Now their fate often lies in human hands. Samaritans that brave the cold and wet to ward off extinction. After a long, stressful night, the female leopard toad has finally made it. As she enters the water, she joins many others, swimming in search of their singing mates. The danger is over for them. In the coming days, they will find partners and lay thousands of eggs in the water, ensuring that for now, another generation of western leopard toads will emerge. And snore the city to sleep on wet August nights for many years to come. Africa, home to an astonishing diversity of wildlife. It is a continent with a plethora of landscapes and creatures. Including a small, fascinating character that has formed relationships with some of the world's largest land animals. In ancient Egypt, It was even considered to be a god that rolled the sun across the sky. The industrious dung beetle lives in a world fraught with challenges. Moving virtual mountains in its quest to feed and breed. Vital to the renewal of the land, it is nature's ultimate recycler. The African dung beetle's story starts on the Great Savanna Plains. Animals thrive here thanks to an abundance of grasses and trees, food for many hungry herbivores. These in turn feed the apex predators. This is the age-old cycle of life on Africa's grasslands. But there is more to this story than meets the eye. This ecosystem also depends on the tireless efforts of a tribe of little-known insects. Dung beetles. Creatures that harness the hidden power of animal waste and close the nutrient loop of one of the world's greatest food chains. They don't only eat dung, their whole lives revolve around it. Dung beetles exist on every continent except Antarctica. But as the continent richest in large mammals, Africa is dung beetle heaven. Here, on a single dung heap, almost 16,000 beetles from up to 150 different species have been recorded. Scientists estimate that on the African savanna, dung beetles clear up and consume about 1 ton of dung per hectare per year. It's not glamorous, but in nature, one creature's waste is another's bounty. This tireless army ensures that the energy driving life is ultimately recycled back into the system. The African savanna is home to many iconic animals. There are plant eaters here of all shapes and sizes. From 5-meter-tall giraffes who browse the canopy to impala who graze the low level. But the tough, fibrous cellulose in plants makes them a challenge to digest. Animals have evolved different methods to tackle this problem. Rhino and zebra host an assortment of helpful gut flora, while ruminants digest in multiple stages. Ruminant animals, like the kudu, have evolved to get the maximum amount of goodness from their leafy food. They do this by chewing the cud. Like domestic cattle and sheep, almost all ruminants have four-chambered stomachs. After food is swallowed, it is softened in the first chamber, regurgitated and chewed again to further break down the tough leaves. It then passes on to the kudu's remaining 3 stomach chambers for digestion. But despite this processing power, some nutrients pass through the gut unused. Which is where the dung beetle comes in, waiting patiently for his payload. African dung beetles are reliant in particular on one very special animal: elephants. Elephants live in family groups of related adult females and their youngsters, led by a matriarch. Juvenile males will mature into bulls weighing as much as 5 tons. Such huge animals need a lot of energy and spend 2/3 of the day feeding. And they've got all the right implements. Dexterous trunks are delicate enough to shell a peanut, but strong enough to lift up to 350 kilograms. Tusks are used to scrape bark from trees or dig bulbs from beneath the ground. Elephants have the most varied diet of any herbivore. Their massive molars grind back and forth, breaking down even the toughest plant material. But despite this, they have notoriously bad digestion. Unlike the kudu, the elephant chews its food only once, and, like us, has only one stomach. It takes up to 46 hours for food to pass through the elephant's system, and less than half of what it eats is properly digested. This means a lot of waste. An adult bull can produce up to 50 tons of nutrient-rich dung in 1 year, while a whole herd of females makes hundreds of tons. Food on an epic scale for the dung beetle. Attracted to the fresh pile by chemical signals, the beetles rush in. It may not seem like a feast, but for these beetles, it's a taste acquired through evolution. Dung beetles have a long history of cleaning up the planet. They belong to an ancient order of insects, the Coleoptera, or beetles, which make up almost a quarter of all species in the animal kingdom. There are thought to be more than 350,000 different species, and their diversity is staggering. From the tok-tokis, named for the drumming sound they make by knocking their undersides on the ground, to the long-horned beetles named for their elongated antennae, and the bizarre giraffe-necked weevil of Madagascar that uses its strange articulated neck for fighting. Beetles come in all shapes and sizes, and they have varied eating habits. The ladybug is actually a predatory beetle. It will hunt for its favorite meal, aphids, often found congregating on a piece of grass. Another accomplished hunter is the velvet ground beetle. With long legs for fast running and large, powerful mandibles, it is a formidable predator. While some take on the challenge of hunting, others wait for food to fall from above. The first dung eaters may have originated millions of years ago from ancestors who fed on decomposing plants. As plants rot, they produce a nutrient-rich, juicy substance. To utilize this resource, some ancient beetles developed filtering mouthparts, replacing the biting and chewing mandibles of their forefathers. These mandibles were later adapted to extract the nutrient-rich liquids from animal dung. Fossil evidence suggests beetles were tucking into dinosaur dung as early as the Jurassic period. But it was the evolution of mammals and the waste they produced that created the opportunities for dung beetles to diversify. Now there are more than 7,000 species of dung beetle worldwide. A remarkable number, considering there are only around 5,000 species of mammals recorded. And they don't just operate during the day. Many savanna herbivores continue to feed throughout the night. With fresh dung being produced after hours, many species of dung beetle operate the night shift. Dung is never in short supply, but the beetles are seldom alone. Competition is fierce. Epic battles are common. To a small beetle, a pile of dung is a colossal supply of food. But only if it can hang on to it. Species like this copper dung beetle are known as rollers. They are experts at smoothing the fibrous dung into a perfectly round ball, so they can simply roll it away. But they need to be quick. There are thieves about. Like most contests in nature, size matters. Larger animals often come out on top. But being big isn't everything in beetle wrestling. Another factor can play a role: temperature. Beetles are ectothermic. Their body temperatures are determined by their environment. But many beetles can also warm themselves through flight. Warmer equals quicker. And the quicker beetle is more likely to win the fight. These two look evenly matched. But the challenger is kept at bay. He keeps coming back. Suddenly, the defender is thrown off. Finally, a compromise. The ball splits conveniently in half, each contestant getting his share. Dung is highly prized because, to a beetle, it is more than just food. It is the foundation on which they build their entire lives. Like many of the savanna's creatures, dung beetles live seasonal lives, in sync with the continuous cycle of wet and dry periods. After the cool, dry winter, all the animals are hungry. With no rain, the grasses dry out and wither. Unable to function in the low temperatures, the dung beetles spend this time in a state of torpor, sheltering underground. But as summer arrives, so too do the first rains. Bringing a flush of fresh leaves and grass. This signals the start of the good times for the herbivores, which relish the chance to fatten up. The elephant herds take advantage of green grasses, relying less on tough bark and wood. And a more nutritious diet means top-quality dung. With the rise in temperatures, the beetles emerge to join the feeding frenzy. After such a long slumber, the beetles need to find food quickly if they are to survive. And the fresh dung is like manna from heaven. But it's more than just dinner. Dung beetles rely on it for another reason. They lay their eggs in it, creating nests known as brood balls.
Here the larvae can feed on a stash of food big enough to last them until they emerge as fully grown beetles. Different beetles adopt a variety of breeding strategies, roughly divided into 3 groups: tunnelers, rollers, and dwellers. The dwellers like an easy life and lay their eggs in the center of the dung heap itself. But dung heaps don't last long with tunnelers and rollers around, meaning that dwellers are the rarest of southern African dung beetles. The tunnelers work harder. They dig nesting burrows right beside or below the heap that they stock with the choicest dung, giving their offspring a great start in life. This is the most common strategy among southern African dung beetles, especially in areas with sandy soil, where digging tunnels requires less energy. But even loose sand takes some shifting. So this beetle has broad, strong forelegs, specially designed for the purpose. As ever, the rollers do it the hard way, undertaking the formidable challenge of moving what must seem to a beetle like a mountain. There are more rollers than dwellers, but fewer than the tunnelers. This beetle has found the perfect material to support her developing larvae. She begins to shape it into a brood ball so she can transport it to a suitable place for burial. With well-developed forelegs, perfectly designed for the task, the shaping is surprisingly fast. But the rolling is easier said than done. The dense ball is cumbersome, and it takes huge strength to maneuver it over the many obstacles en route. Some rollers can push balls more than 70 times their own weight. At times like these, dung beetles show their determined characters. Her efforts will not be in vain. Removing the ball from the activity at the heap is the best way to ensure its safety. She has found the ideal location to bury her precious cargo. Once it is underground, she will lay her eggs inside the nutritious ball, providing a perfect start for her offspring. Dung beetles don't rely on brute force alone. They have evolved other ingenious techniques for dung management. Gymnastic moves can help. Using their front legs to push and their back legs to roll, they can move at an impressive pace. This speed is crucial to avoid hijackers, and the quickest path away from competition is in a straight line. they have a clever little trick to help them stay on track. The navigation dance gives the beetle a raised vantage point and a 360-degree view of its surroundings. This allows it to orient itself using the position of the sun and head consistently in the same direction away from the dung pile. But obstacles can be disorienting. So it's up onto the ball for a quick dance to get its bearings. Amazingly, many nocturnal rollers will perform the same dance in the darkness, navigating by the Milky Way in lieu of the sun. Apart from humans and migratory birds, they are the only terrestrial animals known to use the stars for finding their way. On hot days, temperatures on the African savanna can soar over 40 degrees Celsius. Many animals seek shade to escape the worst of the heat. But not the ever-industrious dung beetle, who keeps working through the hottest part of the day. The sand is baking, burning the beetle's feet. Luckily, the ball is several degrees cooler than the scorched ground and provides an island of respite. It takes just 10 seconds for the beetle's feet to cool by around 7 degrees Celsius so it can keep going. But for some species, this technique is not enough. They have had to make a drastic sacrifice to counteract the dangers of overheating. This powerful roller is one of the few dung beetles that can't fly. It lives in Addo Elephant National Park on South Africa's southern coast. It feeds on the dung of the park's booming elephant population. But when it comes to nesting, only buffalo dung will do. The buffalo is one of the largest herbivores in Africa. Renowned for its short temper, it is less well known for its significant ecological role. Unlike some more selective grazers, it prefers quantity over quality. A prehensile tongue gathers bunches of long grass cropped by a wide row of incisors. This opens areas of grassland, creating access to younger, sweeter shoots for more selective feeders. The buffalo is a ruminant and only digests around 2/3 of what it eats. This, combined with a lack of woody material in its diet, means that buffalo dung is smoother and easier to mold than elephant, making it excellent nesting material for the Addo flightless beetle. But finding dung is a big challenge for this roller, because it is one of the only species that cannot fly. And for such a little creature, covering ground on foot is arduous. But it hasn't lost the ability to fly for nothing.
Addo's climate is arid, and every drop of moisture counts for those that live here. This dung beetle has made an evolutionary trade-off, exchanging flight for defense against dehydration. Beetles, like other animals, breathe oxygen, producing carbon dioxide as waste. This must be expelled, and in the process, precious moisture is lost. But this beetle has developed a remarkable water-saving solution. The empty space under its shell, where the wings should be, forms a specialized storage tank for carbon dioxide, which means it only has to exhale once every half hour. An efficient system preventing dangerous water loss. The arid environment means conserving moisture is critical to the beetle's survival. More so than flight. With so many herbivores around, there's always plenty of dung within walking distance. From their design to their behavior, life for these remarkable beetles is dictated by dung. In early summer, many animals are preparing for mating. The rains have brought an abundance of new food, giving the best chance of survival for a new generation. Now the savanna becomes a battleground for many, as males must prove their virility. For wildebeest, the rut has begun. Male impala also lock horns. Ardent courtship often leads to mating. Even the dung beetles are getting in on the act. Not all species are as bold, though, and for most, mating will happen below ground in the nesting tunnel. Before this can happen, the dung ball must be rolled away and buried. In some species, like these spider dung beetles, both the male and female work together to get the task completed. And having wrestled the ball cross-country to an appropriate spot, the pair gets to work burying it. Once the male's job is done, the female lays her fertilized egg safely inside it. A ball of dung may seem like an odd place to start a family, but it makes a perfect edible nursery. Some dung beetle parents give their unborn youngsters a head start with dung digestion. Like everyone else, dung beetles produce waste, and theirs contains a strong cocktail of digestive bacteria, just what their offspring will need to start out in life. These microorganisms are passed on when the female defecates on the dung ball before laying her egg inside it. Once the fertilized eggs are provisioned, the level of parental care involved varies greatly between species. The nocturnal three-horned dung beetle and the trident dung beetle are both tunnelers with horn-wielding males. But while the female three-horned dung beetle provides no brood care whatsoever, the female trident dung beetle stays in the nest until her progeny emerge as adults. For some dung beetles, parenting is the last job they will ever do. They live for a single season, just long enough to reproduce once. but others survive for up to 3 years. To live long and prosper, they must look after themselves and feed up in preparation for hibernation. The dung beetle's activities may be driven by self-interest, but they do far more than simply continuing their life cycle. Their waste management has a dramatic impact on the landscape and the lives of all the animals that live here. Not least the elephants. In the dry season, they rely heavily on trees for food, and while feeding, swallow many seeds. These seeds are the lucky ones, more likely to germinate than those which fall straight from the tree. Most pass through the elephant system unharmed, and as the industrious beetles bury dung below ground, they unwittingly plant as many as 95% of the seeds in a dung pile. The dung also contains nutrients like nitrogen, essential for productive soil. It's the perfect compost. Thanks to the beetles, seeds that might otherwise have shriveled end up planted in rich, well-aerated soil, giving them the best chance of growing into a new generation of trees that will ultimately feed the elephants. In this partnership between mammals, plants and insects, the little beetles are unwittingly repaying a favor to their biggest dung providers. It's a perfect example of nature's cycle of life. Dung beetles are not only waste managers and gardeners, they are also pest controllers. The rainy season brings swarms of biting insects, including the African buffalo fly, which makes life miserable for many of the savanna's large herbivores. While oxpeckers help with stationary pests like ticks, flying insects are more difficult to deal with. But thanks to the dung beetle's relationship with a tiny mite, the problematic buffalo flies are brought under control. The mites piggyback on the beetles to access dung piles, where they prey on the eggs and larvae of insects, like the African buffalo fly. Dung beetles can reduce the survival rate of fly larvae from 40% to just 6%. These beetles do vital jobs in the ecosystem, like managing pests and clearing waste. But they don't do it alone. Another group of hard-working insects also have a role to play: termites. During the cold winter months, when the dung beetles are in hibernation, the termites will take over their niche. Instead of spreading the dung like the beetles, termites bring it back to their colonies, concentrating the nutrients in one place. This means that the most nutritious grasses are often found around termite mounds. Rhino are the first to take advantage of these lush grazing lawns. Termites aren't the only animals that share the dung beetle's taste for waste. Surprisingly, it's not just insects. Mammals have developed this habit too. Just like the dung beetle larvae, this zebra foal also needs help kick-starting its digestive system. The foal will be weaned from its mother's nutritious milk at around 11 months, after which it will subsist on a diet of grass. To gain the gut bacteria it will need to digest the cellulose-rich material, the zebra foal will eat small quantities of its mother's dung in the first 14 weeks of life. The same is true of many non-ruminant herbivores, including rhino and elephant. The practice of eating dung, known as coprophagy, is fairly common in the animal kingdom. Some animals even rely on dung for essential minerals. The leopard tortoise carries his armor with him wherever he goes. But his hard shell needs a lot of calcium to grow, and he doesn't get enough in his vegetarian diet. To make up for this lack, he turns to this, hyena dung. The hyena's jaws are so strong they can crush bone, resulting in high calcium levels in their dung, which turns it white. Thanks to this dietary supplement, the leopard tortoise can grow his armor-plated calcium-rich shell, and under its protection, he may live up to 100 years. And the tortoise isn't the only creature to turn to dung for its minerals. Even the daintiest insects, like this rayed blue butterfly, will feed on the dung of Africa's carnivores to take advantage of its rich sodium content. In nature's recycling system, dung isn't the only commodity. Where the life of some relies on the death of others, a carcass is a gruesome but common sight. This wildebeest fed a whole pride of lions. Now the insects are dining on the leftovers from Africa's more famous scavengers, like hyena and vultures. Many species, like dung and carrion beetles, will feed on the carcasses of herbivores, cleaning the bones from head to toe. The beetles are filling a grisly niche, making use of resources that few other animals will touch. Recycling the last scraps of energy from the wildebeest's body. It is this cycle of nutrients that allows life to flourish on the African savanna. After the rains comes a glut of new life, timed to take advantage of the summer plenty. And there's a new generation of dung beetles too, emerging to take on the dirty work in a natural system that couldn't function without them. There are more species of beetle in the world than any other animal. And few play a role as important as the humble dung beetle. The tiny counterparts to Africa's giant plant eaters, bringing balance to a system that supports life like no other.
These iconic insects are truly the unsung heroes of Africa.